Hi, and welcome to Faith in an Ever Changing World Encouragement and Hope Faith Story. I'm Janet Harley, your host, and it is my pleasure and privilege to introduce you to Diane Richardson. Hi, Diane. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi, Janet. Thanks so much for having me. It's wonderful
Yes,
to be here.
yes, ma'am. And this woman is certainly an overcomer, and you will hear more about that in her faith story. But there is information that I've put about her in the post. But I do want to mention that she was a special educator for 23 years with a BS degree in special education, which includes 72 graduate credits. She's also a graduate of AMTC, and that's Actors, Models, and Talent for Christ, and has recently trained with Baron Brown Studios in Los Angeles. Thank you again, Diane, for joining me. And when we return, right after this short intro, we will be hearing Diane's faith story. So stay with us. All right, welcome back. And Diane, if you will, tell us, what is your faith story?
My faith story starts as a little girl that was raised with parents of faith. Um, I went to a Catholic church. I was raised as a Catholic. And so I learned as a little girl how to pray. And that's the first time I was introduced to the Bible as a little girl. We had the
Wow.
children's Bible.
Uh-huh.
And so, and even when I couldn't read, I enjoyed paging through the Bible and looking at the pictures because I could remember some of the stories.
Yeah.
And so I knew words in my head that went with the stories. And then as a little girl, I I had become sexually abused. And so at that time, I didn't really understand what was going on.
Mhm.
And it was very difficult, obviously, and I just felt really lost. Um, I kept my faith. In
Mm.
those times, I would pray alone in my bedroom and ask God for help
Yeah.
and ask God for strength and peace in that storm.
Yeah.
And He always gave me that, and He always made me anew. I didn't really know that because I didn't feel that, but He was doing that for me. That happened for years. Because there's some blackouts, I do not remember how many
Wow.
years, but it
Mm.
started between
Mhm.
the age of 4 and 6 through somewhere around 11 years old when I confronted my offender and
Mm.
told him that that's not what love is, because that's what I was told. And so I believed that as a little girl, that that's what love is. And I held on to that sex was equated with love.
Yeah.
Now, as we know, there's many people that still believe that, especially women, that they equate sex with love. They think
Yeah.
if they have sex with the man, that he will love them.
Yeah.
And obviously, it's so untrue.
You're right.
So um, I had that inside of myself without really realizing it. That became a part of me. See?
Uh-huh.
And so it made my self-concept very low. And the way that
Mm.
I fought that was I worked through the arts. So as a little girl, I would listen to my record player
Mm.
and I would listen to the sound of music
Oh.
and I would sing and I would play just all kinds of albums and channel myself through that beautiful music and through those movies.
Mhm.
And it was an escape for me. I learned how to play the piano in grade school. Um, in fact, I played all the way through my senior year in high school. I was going to be a pianist. And that was another way that I channeled my misery inside, because the outside of me, all of this did not match the inside of me. You know, I was wearing a mask.
Yeah.
I was basically a mess inside,
Mm.
but nobody could see it because I learned how to keep the
To
mask on.
mask it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so because I learned to mask it, I became even more involved in the arts. So, you know, I became a cheerleader. I was on the drill team. I was in modern dance. You know,
Mm.
I did all these things going into high school. And so it was all about the world and everything I could show the world,
Yeah.
everything
Mhm.
outside of myself. And even within all that, I wasn't happy.
Right.
Nothing I did was enough.
Mm.
So I was an overachiever. I
Yeah.
just kept doing more and more and more, and people saw that. And so I tried out for theater. Actually, somebody talked me into it because inside of myself, I was always scared to death to
Yeah.
perform.
Yeah.
I became a performer by singing and by playing the piano at recitals at universities, but nobody knew how terrified I was inside. I was
Wow.
petrified. So somebody talked me into trying out for theater in high school. And at first I said, I'm not going to do that. Why would I want to do that? They said, just do it. You'd be really good at it. And I thought,
Oh.
so I tried out. And the next day, somebody came up to me in the hallway and said, did you look at the business room windows? And I said, what do you mean? And they said, well, you got a part. So I looked at the business windows and I got the lead.
I
I
love
couldn't
that.
believe it. I was scared to death. And it was a musical. I was going to have to sing.
Oh no.
And so it blew me away. Well, when I
Wow.
was in that play, it the bug caught me.
Yeah.
It, you know, the theater
Got the
bug caught
bug.
me,
Yeah.
and even more in that type of performance. And obviously, an even stronger way to hide how I was feeling inside. You know, nobody would know because I'm saying somebody else's words. I'm being a character that I'm not. Maybe parts of me are in there, but I'm developing a character that I become. And
Right.
so there's another type of masking.
Yeah.
Okay. So in high school, mixed with all these successful things where people would applaud me and people would be proud of me, mixed with that, I still had the sadness inside and the
Yeah.
abuse
Yeah.
and the haunting feelings of shame
Mm.
and guilt. And so what I did with that is I started drinking. I
Oh.
started, I was introduced to alcohol.
Mm.
And I remembered when I, drank the first time that it gave me a relaxed feeling.
Yeah.
It gave me that warm, like that warm hug.
Right. Right.
And and it felt good because
Mm.
then what it did was it took away what I was really feeling. It put me
Right.
into another zone. So when I wasn't acting and doing all the performing where people were giving it to me,
Uh-huh.
I didn't have it. And so I took it another way.
You
So that way
turned
I
it.
could have it
Mhm.
across the whole board.
Yeah.
But I was, um, you know, jeopardizing myself without realizing. So then in high school, because of that, my drinking increased. And because of my abuse, I became promiscuous. And so the drinking was mixed with, and I'm talking starting, freshman year.
Yeah.
The drinking was
Wow.
mixed with actually sophomore year. That was my first
Yeah.
sexual encounter.
Uh-huh.
Um, I started sleeping around. So I would go to parties, I'd get drunk, and I would seek somebody that
Oh,
I know would please me and make me feel better because
yeah.
obviously alcohol is a depressant
Right.
without me realizing it.
Yeah.
I didn't
Yes.
know because it gives a temporary good feeling, but then it goes away.
Right.
And you also, can go into the state of, just not a real state of, well, I wasn't unconscious, but I'm saying it's not your real conscious level. So then it didn't matter what I did, and it didn't matter. But then I'd have the shame and
Oh,
the guilt.
yes. The emotional
Yeah.
side of, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Because
Yes.
I think, oh, what am I doing? I'd
Mm.
have that, oh, or why don't they like me now? Why don't those
Yeah.
guys like me? Why are they
Mhm.
not talking to me? And
Right.
so what happened was that accelerated into college. And so my first year of college, oh, I got to back up a minute here. And if I look at my notes, please forgive me, but
No, that's fine.
there's a lot. um, when, I should back up a little bit here. Um, that misery that I was feeling in high school was so strong that um, I was in the bathroom and I didn't want to live anymore.
Oh
And
my.
so I remembered my sister had these bottles of pills,
Mm.
and I didn't know what they were. I thought they were vitamins,
Wow.
but I wasn't sure. So that morning before school, I took a whole bunch of them, and I thought somebody's gonna feel bad for what I did. And it just didn't matter to me.
Yeah.
And that morning, I was in French class, first hour, and I'll never forget, I was just so sick. I mean, my stomach was just torn in knots. I didn't
Yeah.
physically get sick, but I know it was really bad. And nothing else happened to me. Thank God they weren't something else. But
Yeah.
to me, that's my first like suicide attempt because I really didn't know what was in the bottles and I didn't really care.
Yeah.
I just felt at the end of my rope for trivial things, I guess, but they weren't. It was that those feelings inside, which
Yeah.
really weren't trivial, we'll say. So,
Ooh.
all right. After high school, I met a man and we dated for 4.5 years. So that
Mm.
was through college. So,
Uh-huh.
like I left off where I carried all those behaviors into college,
Uh-huh.
but they accelerated even more.
Wow.
So instead of doing my studies, I was going out partying, drinking as much as I can, sleeping with as many men as I could,
Mhm.
and I ended up on probation my freshman year
Ooh.
because I dropped classes. I
Yes.
didn't show up for classes. I didn't
Mhm.
study
Yeah.
because I had the freedom of doing whatever Diane wanted to do. So I
Right.
accelerated into my coping mechanisms
Yeah.
to get rid of my misery.
Yeah.
So what happened then, my freshman year, is I ended up getting pregnant as well.
Oh,
And
okay.
so I was majoring in education and I really
Mm.
wanted to be a teacher.
Mm.
So I was selfish in that way. But also, my father did not like the man. And I was scared to death that my father wouldn't approve of me or my family wouldn't approve of me. And the approval is always what I was seeking,
Yeah.
approval everywhere. So if
Yeah.
my own family didn't approve of me, it just felt like the end of my world. So then I knew, or I decided that I needed to abort that child. I needed to get rid of that child because that child was going to interfere with my life.
Yeah.
I didn't see
Yeah.
that child as I didn't see it as a child.
Mm.
I didn't think of a baby. I just thought of it as an inconvenience.
Mm.
And so I aborted that child, and I still remember walking up to that facility.
Mm.
And even back then, in 1978, people were praying outside the building.
Yeah.
And I said to my friend, what are they doing? Because I knew they were praying, but in my mind, it's like, what are you doing here?
Right.
Don't be
Praying
praying.
there.
Don't be praying that
Why are you praying there? Yeah.
yeah, don't be praying
Yeah.
that I can't do this because I
Yeah.
need to do this. So I did
Oh,
not like, I was extremely uncomfortable that they were there, but I knew it was wrong. I knew what I was doing was wrong.
yeah. Yep.
And so I had the abortion. I'll never forget it.
Mm.
And I've regretted it, all those years.
Yeah.
And so that added more to the misery, that added
Mhm.
more to the depression. And that was in
Right.
college.
Right.
So I had my, I would say, second attempt at suicide in college.
Mm.
And what I did was, and it was simply my boyfriend and I had a really bad fight. And in my mind, it was the end of the world.
Wow.
Why would I be getting rejected from my boyfriend
Mm.
this badly? Because I equated love with getting along, everything's great, that it's supposed to be an even plane. And so I just felt like it was going to end immediately.
Mm.
And so I remember my grandmother had Valium in her dresser in the top drawer. She was
Yeah.
living with us. And I knew how easy it would be to go in there while she was shopping or something else and just take some. I thought she's not going to know. So I did.
Mm.
And I think I only
Oh
took
my
a couple,
goodness.
but that next night after we fought, I took the Valium and then I drank as much wine as I could at the bar that we were at.
Mm.
It was ladies' night.
Diane. Ooh.
So I drank,
Yeah.
drank, drank. It was 2 for 1. And all I remember was being on the dance floor and being in the state of, I guess you could say, oblivion. Just the state of, I felt
Mhm.
like I was in a movie. And of
Yeah.
course, I liked that.
Yeah.
I liked being in that realm of, I don't have to
Mm.
be here. I
Right.
don't have to be Diane.
Yeah.
And so nothing further came of that. That relationship broke up after 4.5 years.
Mm.
And so after it broke up, because I did get engaged, I just felt even more broken because I was in a rejected relationship.
Oh, yeah.
So for 3 years,
Mm.
in that 3 years before I met my husband over here, I drank even heavier. In fact,
Wow.
I went out as much as I could. And I should say, which I haven't said all along, that I was called, I guess you could call a functioning alcoholic. That's what they call them.
Uh-huh.
Is I was
Okay.
a binge drinker. I did not
Mm.
drink during the week at all. I held a job. I, I lived so-called normally, but what happened was it started affecting me physically. I was getting
Sure.
extremely sick with the
Ooh.
hangover.
Mm.
And I mean, full days sick, complete full days. And
Mm.
and it was where I was losing a day every week. So if you can imagine, you're losing 52 days in a year. It's really a lot of days. You multiply that times 3 years,
Yeah.
that's even more days.
Yeah.
But so
Mm.
in the midst of that, my promiscuity increased even more. So I
Yeah.
remember going to the bars and picking out the man that I wanted
Yeah.
and working on that man, that I was going to get that man in bed.
Right.
It was like a contest for me.
Yeah.
And it was an accomplishment for me.
Mm.
And because I hated what I went through with my last relationship, I wanted to take them to bed and have nothing else to do with them.
Mm.
I just wanted to do what I wanted,
Mm-hmm.
slap them across the face, and go on to the next one. And
Wow.
that's the way that I lived. And I did that
Mm.
pretty much every week.
Oh my
So if
goodness.
you can imagine the number of men
Uh,
that I slept with, I
yes.
lost count.
Yeah.
And in that time, I didn't care
Yeah.
because I didn't want anybody to hurt me that way again.
Right.
And I was
Mm.
in that state of using everything that I could to feel better because this wasn't
Mhm.
satisfied inside yet.
Right.
That
Right.
mess was spiraling,
Yeah.
and all of this was medicating.
Mm.
And so,
Bless you. Mm.
oh, thank you. I ended up
Oh.
marrying a abusive man. It was a long distance relationship.
Uh-huh.
So the behaviors did not show when he came to see me or when I went and saw him. There were no behaviors that reflected that he was an abusive man. I do not recommend long distance relationships.
I know. I was going to say that they're really tough.
He lied to me. Every single thing,
Oh.
you know,
Uh-huh.
I married a lie,
Uh-huh.
and I thought I married the perfect man. But
Mm.
as soon as I got into the marriage, it started.
Oh
And
my.
so, yeah, from the honeymoon
Ugh.
on. And, but in an abusive marriage, you have the Jekyll Hyde syndrome. And the
Mm.
Jekyll Hyde is, I'm sure you know a lot of this, and people listening, but the Jekyll Hyde is the misery and the abuse and the immediate honeymoon afterwards, the apology, maybe the flowers,
Yeah.
maybe going out to dinner and everything's great again. So
Yeah.
your hope is there again. It's like, oh, here's the man that I married.
Yeah.
This is it.
Yeah.
And then you go through that again. And it's
Hmm.
like a ping pong ball, and you're getting tossed physically, but back and
Good
forth between
gracious.
your emotions. And so I was entering a deep depression.
Yes.
And I started medicating myself at night because he wouldn't
Mm.
come home at night. And so I would drink. So I didn't think inside myself that I'm mimicking his behavior, that I'm doing the same thing as him. To me,
Yeah.
it was I'm doing something to help myself,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
to help myself.
Oh, wow.
And I should say, in all of this that I just mentioned, I
Uh-huh.
prayed. I would pray out of desperation.
Wow.
I would pray and yell to God in my mind, why is this happening?
Yeah.
Why don't you help me?
Yeah.
I know you're there,
Mm.
but I still felt some comfort.
Yeah.
And that I didn't understand, but that let me hang on to the faith.
Yeah. Yeah.
That marriage did not last. And that was just a couple years.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so because I knew it was ending, I decided to go out and drink as much as I could.
You kept falling back on that alcohol,
Yep.
yeah.
And,
Mm.
but this was into the hard alcohol now. So go out and drink as much as I could.
Wow.
And I didn't mention that I went to a psychiatrist that prescribed Valium to me.
Wow.
I had one
Whoa.
memory of Valium from way back then,
Oh.
And I remember how good it felt. So when she
Yeah.
said, I'll give you something to settle down, I'll give you Valium. And I thought,
Mm.
that works.
Mm.
And so I started taking Valium every night to
Mm.
cope.
My goodness.
And so when I went out that night, when I knew my marriage had ended, I decided that I was done, that I was definitely done. I wanted to
Mm.
end my life. I didn't want to go on any further because my insides were empty.
Oh.
It was an empty shell.
Yeah.
Um,
You
there
had
was
hit rock
nothing,
bottom, sound like at
rock
that.
bottom. There was
Yeah.
nothing. I felt there
Yeah.
was nothing left.
Nothing else to, yes.
Yeah. And I wanted to be married my whole life. I never wanted to be a divorcee. I never wanted to not have children. I never wanted
Right.
to. So I went out, I drank Long Island iced teas, which are at least 4 shots each, I believe. And I probably drink at least 8 of them
Oh
because
my.
I had
Mm.
a what you call empty boot syndrome where I could drink, 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 and not be sick that night.
Yeah.
And so I stayed in a hotel. I decided I wanted to be, and this real sick part of it was I was a big movie star
Yeah.
lover. And that's why I
Mm.
ended up meeting a man out in California because I wanted to be a movie star. And so, because of that, and I liked the old movies, I wanted to be found like Marilyn Monroe, dead.
Oh my.
I wanted to be found like,
Mm.
I think, Jean Harlow. I wanted to be found, and I was blonder. I wanted to be that blonde that was found in a bed, dead, with nothing on, and everyone feels sorry for me,
Oh my goodness.
even though I wasn't there. I wanted it to be like a punishment, like, look at what all of you did to me.
Right. Right.
And the empathy that I didn't feel I was getting
Yeah.
from anybody
Yeah.
because of all that I went through and I had inside, I didn't recognize any empathy ever. And so I got to the hotel room and I took 3 or 4 Valium.
Wow.
I can't remember with that. And I did not expect to get woken up in the morning. I also met a
Mm.
man at the bar that I was going to take to bed that night. And I decided right when I got to the hotel that I didn't want to sleep with him because I still had a ring on my finger.
Mm.
So I still morally couldn't do it. I was faithful to my husband those 2 years.
Yeah.
I never cheated on him because when I got
Yeah.
married, I wasn't going to be that promiscuous person. I was going to be that happily
Right.
married woman.
Right.
So because I knew it was breaking up, I decided that night I was going to hope to die, sleep with somebody, and be found like that. And
Wow.
so that man knew where I was staying at the hotel.
Yeah.
He came to the hotel, and I didn't hear a thing. And so he got hold of the manager and said that he was staying in the room and he didn't have a key and he couldn't get in. And so I guess they were pounding on the door and somehow the key, the extra key the manager had or something wasn't working and they were pounding, pounding, pounding on the door and I never heard anything.
Wow.
So I woke up the next morning. How did this happen? Like,
Wow.
why am I awake?
Mm.
And I was very sick and I was just out of
Mhm.
it, you could say, you know.
Mhm.
But I drove home and then my husband happened to be there and said, "Where were you and what's going on with you?"
Yeah.
And I just, I didn't want to talk to him. But oh, where are we at here?
Well, you know,
Going by my timeline.
By
Okay.
God's grace, you are still living. I mean, after all you have experienced in your life, after everything that you have gone through, and and now by God's grace, you are still living, and now you're living for Him.
Yes, that's the end of the story. Do we have time? I can make it fast if we're running out of time.
Absolutely. At the end of the, please tell us the redemption here.
So the end of the story, I came back to Wisconsin. I stopped taking the Valium. Um, And I went to an Al-Anon retreat because I didn't understand the drinking. I never was educated about it. So I didn't
Uh-huh.
understand alcoholism at all. And I was like, what did I just get out of? What happened? As well as trying to understand all the people I drank with that had problems, but I didn't. So I went to the Al-Anon retreat to learn, and it was for a week. I mean, no, actually, I think it was a long weekend. But the last day of the retreat, they offered a free assessment for drinking.
Oh,
And I thought, free? I'll take it because
yeah.
I took anything free. I was just like, why not? I don't care.
Oh,
So I took the assessment and I answered all the questions bluntly honest. You do this? Yeah, I did that. Have you going through this? Did that one too. Just this slap, 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 slap.
yeah.
Like, yeah, Diane. Yeah,
Hello.
Diane. God is
Yeah.
nudging me.
Yeah.
Hello. And
Yeah.
so on that retreat, because I realized, well, the man said, then he said, Diane, do you think you have a problem drinking? And I said, yeah, yeah, I guess I do.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so I went to my room and I just grieved
Yeah.
heavily. Why is this happening? Why did I go through this? Why did all this happen in my life? I mean, it was just
Yeah.
this. I was in my 30s,
Mm.
and but it was like a cleansing, grieving. Like, I'm
Mm.
going to have a new life. I don't have to be like this anymore.
Yeah.
I can change. And I never really thought of that before. Like, I can change. And oh, I guess my husband wasn't the only one with the problem. I was doing the same thing just to feel
Mm-hmm.
better, you know?
Yeah.
And so I signed up for treatment. And when I got home, this is the days of answering machines. When I got home into that next week, I had a message on my answering machine, and it said, we had to change the treatment starting date. So it's going to start in such and such a date. Give me a call back to verify that you can do that. Oh, wait. Oh, I'm going too far. I got to back up a second. I got to back up a second. When I came to that realization, okay, in the retreat, that I could change,
Mm-hmm.
okay, and I grieved, that night I had a dream. And I dreamt that I was at our cottage and we also kept the key in the light.
Uh-huh.
And so when I got to the cottage, the door was locked. And so I reached up to get the key, and 3 keys fell down. And I
Oh.
thought, 3 keys? That's weird. There's always only been one up there. And I went in, and my parents were fighting. And I
Mm.
just felt that tension and that fear of the
Yeah.
environment. And why am I in this? Why is this? I hate this. And so I just felt rotten. And I went into the bathroom and came out, and I just was still in this nightmare and confusion. And this lady was in her room. She was the only one up. She had her light on. And so I went in there and I was just distraught. And she said, what's the matter? Well, I had this nightmare, and my parents were fighting and I just felt tough, and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I went to my room and turned out the light. I was just going to go back to bed. And I felt better after talking to her. So I went into the room, and when I turned the light off, and this is hard to share public because I didn't share it with a lot of people publicly. I have,
Oh,
but it
sure.
was safe.
Yeah.
But I turned the light off, and when you get into bed, you kind of sit on it like this, and you get in. I sat on my bed, and I saw light on the wall, and it was flowers. And I was like, and they were lilies. They were lilies. Like one
Oh,
was leaning this way and one was leaning, you know how they do, and
yeah.
in the pointy leaves like this. And I looked at it like, what? And I put my hands on it, and it didn't go away. And then I thought, why are there flowers on them? And it was just light. And then I thought, three keys: Father, Son, and Holy Spirit.
Oh
Three
my.
people in God.
Mm.
I learned that. And lilies,
Oh,
that stands for Easter. That stands for
resurrection.
Christ has risen and
Yeah.
he's given us a new life. And I
Yeah.
was like, oh my gosh, because I was going to have a new life because I realized it the night before. So I flew out of my room because I had to
Yeah.
tell the girl that I just talked to in her room. I wanted her to come and see it. So if I told people, they didn't think I was crazy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I flew down there and I go in there in a panic. She's again, and she's like, "Are you all right?" And I said, "Yes, yes, I'm great. But you have to come with me to my room." And she's
Wow.
kind of looking at me like, "What?" I said, "It's okay, it's okay." So I brought him in my room and I said, "Don't think I'm weird, but I need to close the door and I need to turn the light off." And I told her, "I need you to sit on my bed." And she's just kind of looking at
Oh,
me, but
bless
she
you.
trusted me. She sat down next to me on the bed. We were like side by side, and I said, "Look at the wall." And I said, "What do you see?" That's all I said. And she said, "I see flowers." I said, "Yes, yes, yes. What kind of flowers do you see?" "Well, look, they're lilies. I can see lilies." And
How
I said,
about
"Yes,
that?
yes. I'm not the only one." She could see it. And so then what does she go? "It looks like it's coming from the window." So she went over to the curtains and she moved them like this. And she sat back down and the whole thing disappeared.
Oh my
And she's like,
goodness.
"Let's try to make some other flowers." And she's
Oh.
we're looking at like, and
Wow.
she couldn't form anything, not even an animal, and and so we had to write each ourselves a letter to mail to ourselves from that retreat. And
Mhm.
here's the letter, getting old, and I've had it all these years.
Wow.
But it's what I wrote to myself after
Uh-huh.
I went through all that. And I said, oh, here it's that powerful. So August 17th, 1989. Oh, I didn't think I'd get like this. But that's
Oh.
how much this letter means to me. Dear Diane, you are so very special. Oh gosh, sorry. And greatly appreciated. It's all right if you're shy. Sometimes people will still like you. It's been a couple of months since the program was called Flip. As I hope that all is going well with you and that you're feeling healthy. You learned a lot in 5 days, and it's only the beginning. Keep your eyes and your heart open to the true happiness you have been dreaming of all these years.
Mm.
This inner peace is more a part of your soul
Mm.
in being today. Rest with security in all that you do
Mm.
because you can make mistakes and still be successful. Remember all that you've learned and grieved, but only cling to the strength for
Wow.
time. Life is like a flower. Since you represent a blossoming bud of a lily, this is a sign of the higher power.
Mm.
Love, Diane.
Oh my. That is a powerful letter to
Yeah,
yourself.
yeah.
Oh, wow.
And so
Diane, thank you so much
you're welcome.
for sharing this very powerful faith
Yeah,
story with us and emotional. I'm sure it is to you still today.
Yeah, I don't share that letter with many. And I thought today I would like to share it with you and all the listeners so they can see
Thank
how a
you.
life can evolve
Yes, yes,
and how you
absolutely.
can take all that misery
Yeah.
and change
Mhm.
it into joy with the love of Christ. And that I, with everything that I went through, finally had insides that matched my outsides. Joy with the happy big smile
Mhm.
where it's not a mask. It's me. And people don't get it now how I can be so happy. It's like, well,
Yeah,
this isn't the
yeah.
fake, this is the real. And
Wow.
so that's my goal in acting is to shine the light of Christ
Wow.
to as
That
many as
is
we can.
wonderful. That is wonderful. Absolutely. And you certainly are. You certainly are in all that you
Yeah.
are doing and what the Lord is giving you to do. Thank you so much again, Diane, for sharing that with us today and that letter. Um, Thank you for doing that.
You're
And I want
welcome.
to thank all of you for watching and Creative Motion Network and Abundant Television Network, two great networks that you need to check out. You can find faith in an ever changing world, encouragement, and hope on both of those networks. Thank you again for watching. Have faith and look up, friends, where our help comes from. Bye. God bless.
Amen.